Okay, this is our second in a series of 3 videos having to do with properties that I want you to handle differently after I show you this method of doing it. But we're going to talk about line types. And right up here, just like we went up here to change colors or the current color, we're going to use this option. I'm going to first of all change this back to we'll just change it to cyan. That's an easy to see color. And then I'm going to go to properties and I'm going to pull down the line type item, and you can see that the only line type, we'll talk about by layer and by block a little bit later, but the only line type that we've got available to us initially is the continuous line type. To create or to load other line types, we have to go to the Other button. And Other brings up what's called the Line Type Manager, just a dialog box that lets us manage all of this. And if we kind of look down here in lower left, the name of the command is actually line type. So you could type in line type and get this same dialog box to pop up. But if I can avoid the keyboard and use a quick pick, I probably would do that. So the next thing we have to do is load the line type into this drawing's memory. And we go to load, and all of the line type definitions are stored in a file called acadlt.lin. Okay? In AutoCAD LT, it's called acadlt.lin. In full-blown AutoCAD, it's called acad.lin. And in here are all the different line types that somebody has created and loaded into this file. Takes care of all the spaces and dashes and dots and distances and lengths for those spaces and those dashes. All of that is written into these different definitions. Okay, there are even line types that have actual words in it, like for hot water supply, or have symbols in it for like railroad tracks, things like that. We're not going to get that fancy. And in fact, even the first big group of line types are all ISO or ACAD ISO, International Standards Organizations, which are more metric related than anything. So we're going to skip past all of that. And then we're going to get into the type of line types that we usually have to use. Maybe a border line type or a center line type. I'm going to try to stay off of there so that pop-up help that quits showing up. Border and center, and we go down a little bit. We got dash, dot, and dashed, and divide. And then every single one of those line types that we've also got a 2 and a times 2 version of it. And one is a half size version and the other is a double size version. So the lengths of the spaces and the lengths of the dashes that make up the line are either halved or doubled in them. What I typically do is just use the fully named line type. Let's make the center line get loaded. I'm going to pick that and I'm going to say OK. And it gets loaded into this drawing's memory, and now that is an available line type. I'll go ahead and pick it and say make it current, and then I'll OK this dialog box and watch what happens up here. That becomes the current line type. So now I'm drawing with a color of cyan and I'm drawing with a line type of center. So when I draw a line, it takes on that center line type, that long dash and a space and a short dash and a space and a long dash, and it just kind of keeps repeating like that. And AutoCAD always centers that pattern in between the two endpoints. Now, how big those show up are determined by the length of the line and how far in you're zoomed and that sort of thing. What you can do is change that. If you're drawing lines that are 100 feet long, and that happens, obviously we draw full scale in AutoCAD, you're going to want to see those things. Now, a center line, I don't know the exact number, but it's about 1 inch long and about 1/8 of an inch space and 1/8 of an inch and another 1/8 of an inch and then another inch. I don't know the number off the top of my head. It might be 1 1/4 inches and 1/4 and 1/4 and 1/4 and 1 1/4. Whatever. We can change the scale factor that's used to display that line type based on how far in we're zoomed or how far out we're zoomed by setting what's called the LT scale. And all I need to do is type in LTS and I'll get LT scale. And I can scale all of my line types that way. If I type in LTS and hit enter and I set the scale to half of that, now all of the dashes and spaces become half of their current size. So I should end up with, we got a couple of short dashes right now, I should end up with 3 or 4 short dashes when I do that. Oh, even more than that. I got 5 of them this time. So again, it's kind of pertinent to the length of the line. If I type in LT scale and change it to 2, I end up with, you know, twice as long a line and dash as what I had when I originally drew it. So you can play around with LT scale to whatever makes you happy, whatever lets you realize or see those line types while you're working, depending upon the scale of your work. If you're working architecturally or civilly in the mapping world, you're going to be dealing with longer lines than, you know, my chosen field happened to have been in the mechanical world where I was drawing smaller objects. I didn't have to have my LT scale set as high. So you can play around with LT scale however you want. If I go up here and I want to look at some of these other line types, I'll pull this down, I'll pick other again, and I'll go to load, and let's load, let's scale down here and find hidden. I'll load the hidden line type and say OK. And we'll say OK. Notice that I didn't pick current this time, so it doesn't become the current line type. I made a mistake. I should have probably picked current, but I'll just pull this down. And now hidden shows up in the list, and I can pick it and make it current. And now when I'm drawing lines, I'm using that hidden line type, okay, a dashed line type. And there are numerous line types. Many, many companies will go up here once, and they'll pick other once. And then when they pick load, they're going to right click. I don't know if I can do this. Can I right click and select all? Yep, I'll right click and select all. Even these ISO line types that I don't like. And I'll say OK. And we're reloading because we've already loaded center and we've already loaded hidden. We're going to get prompted saying, do you want to rewrite that? Because somebody may have modified that acadlt.lin file to change the lengths of the dashes and spaces. So I'll just say, yeah, reload it. Who cares? We didn't change it anyway. Reload hidden. Boom, everything's done. And now they all show up in this list, and then I don't have to mess around with loading and finding it in the list. I just go in here and I say, hey, make the dash dot layer current or object the dash dot line type current, and say OK. And now I'm drawing with a dash dot line type. And basically that's line types.